They called him Lord Macho long before he earned the title. Power clung to him the way incense clung to cathedral stone, silent, heavy, unquestioned. On the morning of his wedding, the city's most feared man stood at the altar, tailored in gray, calm as a locked vault. This marriage was a strategy. An alliance. Clean, bloodless, inevitable. Then Angelina ran down the aisle barefoot. She came from the forgotten edges of the city, where hunger taught speed and grief taught courage. Her dress was torn, her hair wild, her eyes burning with a truth that didn't ask permission. When she grabbed Macho's hand, the gasp that rippled through the church felt like thunder cracking marble. No one understood why he let her pull him away. But in that single moment, as her fingers wrapped around his, something ancient stirred in his chest, a memory of bread shared in darkness, of kindness offered when the world had turned its back, of a woman who once saved his life and never knew his name. If you've been hooked up to this moment, please, I would need your help as I have a goal of reaching 1,000 subscribers within a few days. Consider subscribing and let us know where you are watching from. Your support helps us breathe life into stories that were never meant to stay silent. Thank you for being part of this journey. Now, let's dive back into the story. The cathedral smelled of roses and old money. Sunlight filtered through stained glass, painting the marble floor in shades of gold and crimson. Vincent Cordero, Lord Macho to those who whispered his name in fear, stood at the altar with his hands clasped behind his back, his charcoal suit immaculate, his expression unreadable. He didn't love the woman walking toward him. Isabella Chin moved down the aisle like a queen approaching her coronation, her white gown a cascade of silk and diamonds, her veil trailing behind her like a ghost. She was beautiful in the way expensive things were beautiful, polished, flawless, and cold. Their marriage had been negotiated over whiskey and contracts, a merger between two empires that controlled half the city's underground operations. Vincent felt nothing as she approached. Not anticipation. Not regret. Just the steady calculation that had kept him alive for 38 years. The pews were filled with men in expensive suits and women dripping in jewels, crime lords, politicians, businessmen who'd built fortunes on other people's blood. They watched with predatory interest, measuring the alliance's value, already planning how to exploit it. Father O'Brien cleared his throat, his Bible trembling slightly in his weathered hands. Even men of God feared Vincent Cordero. Dearly beloved, the priest began, his voice echoing through the vaulted ceiling, we are gathered here today. The heavy oak doors burst open. The sound cracked through the cathedral like a gunshot. Every head turned. Hands moved toward concealed weapons. Vincent's jaw tightened, but he didn't reach for his gun. Instead, his eyes locked on the figure stumbling through the entrance. A woman. Black. Barefoot. Her dress, if you could call it that, was a faded cotton thing, torn at the hem, stained with dirt and what looked like old blood. Her hair was a wild corona around her face, natural curls untamed and glorious. Her dark skin gleamed with sweat, her chest heaving as though she'd run a marathon. But it was her eyes that stopped Vincent's heart. Those eyes. He knew those eyes. Stop, she cried, her voice raw and desperate. Stop this wedding. Murmurs erupted through the congregation. Isabella's father, Chin Wei, rose from his seat, his face darkening with rage. Two of Vincent's men moved toward the aisle, hands inside their jackets. Vincent raised one hand. They froze. The woman walked down the aisle. Not walked, ran, stumbled, fought her way forward like she was wading through water. Her bare feet slapped against the cold marble. People pulled back as she passed, as though poverty were contagious. She had no weapon. No backup. No plan beyond reaching him. When she was 10 feet away, Vincent saw the recognition dawn in her eyes too. Her steps faltered. Her lips parted. You, she whispered. Angelina, he said, and the name felt like prayer. Isabella turned to him, confusion and fury warring on her face. You know this person? Vincent didn't answer. He couldn't. because Angelina Clarke was already reaching for him, her hand extended, and in that hand he saw the ghost of bread torn in half, shared in a cellar 15 years ago when he'd been nothing but a wounded kid running from men who wanted him dead. "Please," Angelina said, her voice breaking. "Please don't do this. Not like this." Their fingers touched. And Vincent Cordero, the man who'd built an empire on fear and never let anyone close enough to hurt him, let her pull him away from the altar. The church exploded into chaos. Vincent's security detail moved like shadows, blocking the aisle as Angelina pulled him toward the side door. Guns appeared in hands. Isabella shrieked something about disrespect. Chen Wei's voice boomed orders in Mandarin. But Vincent kept walking, his hand wrapped around Angelina's, feeling the calluses on her palm, the kind that came from survival, not luxury. "Let them through," Vincent commanded, his voice cutting through the chaos like a blade. His men hesitated, then parted. They burst through the side door into the rectory, then out into the alley behind the cathedral. The sounds of the wedding, shouting, confusion, the scramble of expensive shoes on marble, faded behind them. Angelina didn't stop running until they reached the shadow of a dumpster, where she finally released his hand and bent over, gasping for breath. Vincent stood perfectly still, his mind racing through calculations. He just walked away from a $50 million alliance. Chen Wei would consider it an insult worth killing over. His own organization would question his judgment. And yet. "The cellar," he said quietly. 15 years ago. You hid me." Angelina straightened slowly, her eyes meeting his. Up close, he could see the exhaustion carved into her face, the hunger that had made her cheeks hollow. But those eyes, those same fierce, kind eyes, hadn't changed. "You were bleeding," she whispered. "Barely conscious. You stumbled into my building, and I thought you were just another." She stopped, shook her head. "I pulled you into the cellar. Gave you water. Bread. The only food I had. You never asked my name. You never gave it." A bitter smile touched her lips. "I watched you leave the next morning, and I thought I'd never see you again. Then I saw your face on the news 2 years later. Lord Macho. The man who controlled everything." She laughed, but it sounded like breaking glass. "The man I fed my last meal to had become a king." Vincent's jaw tightened. "Why are you here, Angelina?" "Because I'm dying." The words dropped between them like stones. "Cancer. 6 months, maybe less. And I spent the last 3 weeks trying to find you, trying to get past your security, your walls, your empire. I finally learned about the wedding from a bartender who works at Chen's club." "You came to stop my wedding because you're dying?" "No." Her voice strengthened. "I came because I saw what you were about to do. Marry a woman you don't love for power you don't need. I saw it in your eyes in that cellar 15 years ago. You were running from something. And you're still running. You don't know what you're talking about. Don't I?" She stepped closer, fearless in a way that made his chest ache. "I shared bread with a scared boy who said thank you like he'd forgotten the words existed. That boy is still in there, Vincent. I saw him at the altar, buried under the suit and the reputation and the lies." Behind them, the alley door slammed open. Vincent's second-in-command, Lorenzo, appeared, gun drawn. "Boss, we need to move. Chen's people are." "Get the car," Vincent ordered. "Both of us." Lorenzo's eyes widened. "Sir? You heard me." Angelina's hand found his again, and this time Vincent squeezed back. "Where are we going?" she asked. Vincent looked at the woman who'd once saved his life without knowing it, the woman who'd just destroyed his carefully constructed future, and felt something he hadn't felt in 15 years. "Hope. Somewhere real," he said. The black Mercedes tore through the city streets, Lorenzo behind the wheel, his knuckles white against the steering wheel. Vincent sat in the back beside Angelina, his phone vibrating endlessly in his pocket, calls from Chinwei, from Isabella, from every lieutenant in his organization demanding answers he didn't have. He ignored them all. You understand what you've done? Lorenzo's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror. Chen will call this a declaration of war. The alliance was never going to hold, Vincent interrupted. Chen wanted my territory. Isabella wanted my name. I was buying time, not loyalty. And now? Vincent looked at Angelina, who was staring out the window at the city blurring past, the skyscrapers, the wealth, the world she'd never been part of. Now we survive differently. Lorenzo's jaw worked. He'd been with Vincent for 12 years, since they were both young and hungry. Where am I driving, boss? The safe house. Bridgewater Street. That's 20 miles outside the city. No security, no backup. Exactly. They drove in silence after that, leaving the city's gleaming core behind, passing through neighborhoods that grew progressively grayer, poorer, more forgotten. Angelina's breathing had become labored, her hand pressed against her side. When's your next treatment? Vincent asked quietly. She turned to him, surprise flickering across her face. How did you? Cancer doesn't announce itself in 6 months without treatment already started. He nodded toward her hand. The way you're holding your ribs. Radiation burns. Angelina's laugh was soft and sad. I stopped treatment 2 weeks ago. Couldn't afford it. The free clinic did what they could, but, she shrugged, and the gesture held more resignation than he'd seen in men facing execution. Some battles you can't win with courage alone. Vincent's phone buzzed again. This time, he pulled it out, saw Chinwei's name, and answered. You've made a grave mistake, Cordero. Chen's voice was ice-wrapped in silk. My daughter stands humiliated before our entire community. Your daughter stands humiliated before your business partners, Vincent corrected. She never wanted this marriage either. That's irrelevant. You gave your word. I gave my word to a deal built on mutual deception. You wanted my distribution network. I wanted your political connections. Neither of us wanted a marriage. A long pause. Then, the poor woman. The one who interrupted. She means something to you. It wasn't a question. Vincent's grip tightened on the phone. That's none of your concern. Everything about you is my concern now. You owe me, Vincent. Blood or money, I will collect. The line went dead. Lorenzo met his eyes in the mirror. He'll come for her. I know. Angelina had gone very still beside him. When she spoke, her voice was steady despite the tremor in her hands. You should take me back. Drop me at a shelter. I came to save you from making a mistake, not to become your burden. Vincent turned to face her fully, seeing the woman who'd given her last bread to a stranger, who'd asked for nothing in return, who'd fought through his empire's walls just to offer him truth. 15 years ago, you saved my life, he said. Let me return the favor. I'm dying, Vincent. Then let's make the time count. The safe house appeared ahead, a modest brick building surrounded by trees, anonymous and quiet. A place where Lord Macho didn't exist. Only Vincent did. The safe house smelled of dust and disuse. Vincent unlocked the door, revealing a space frozen in time, plain furniture, bare walls, a kitchen that hadn't cooked a meal in months. It was the opposite of everything his empire represented, simple, honest, unguarded. Angelina stepped inside slowly, her fingers trailing along the doorframe as if testing its solidity. How long since you've been here? 3 years. Maybe 4. Vincent moved to the windows, checking sightlines out of habit. I bought it when I needed a place the organization didn't know about. Somewhere to think. To hide, she corrected gently. He didn't deny it. Lorenzo carried in 2 bags from the trunk, emergency supplies Vincent kept stocked in every vehicle. I'll do a perimeter check, he said, but his eyes held a question. Are you sure about this? Vincent nodded once, and Lorenzo disappeared outside. Alone with Angelina, the weight of what he'd done began to settle. He'd walked away from everything: power, protection, the careful architecture of control he'd spent 15 years building. For what? A woman he barely knew, armed with a memory of kindness and 6 months to live? You're questioning it already, Angelina said, lowering herself carefully onto the sofa. I can see it on your face. I'm calculating the cost. And? It's higher than I expected. He moved to the kitchen, filled a glass with water from the tap, brought it to her. Chin won't let this go. Neither will my own people. They'll see weakness. Blood will follow. Angelina accepted the glass, her fingers brushing his. Then why do it? Vincent sat across from her, elbows on his knees, and for the first time in 15 years, he let someone see past the armor. Because in that cellar, when I was bleeding out and half dead, you looked at me like I was human. Not a tool. Not a threat. Just someone who needed help. His voice dropped. No one's looked at me that way since. That's not true. It is. The admission tasted like copper. I built an empire on fear because fear is reliable. Love isn't. Loyalty isn't. But fear? He shook his head. Fear keeps people in line. And lonely. Angelina set down the glass, leaned forward despite the obvious pain it cost her. You've been lonely so long you've forgotten what connection feels like. I haven't forgotten. I chose differently. No, Vincent. You chose safety. Her eyes held his, unflinching. You chose to become Lord Macho because the boy who needed help was too vulnerable to survive. But that boy is still there, suffocating under all that power. The words landed like punches. Vincent stood, paced to the window, watched Lorenzo checking the perimeter with military precision. That boy got people killed. His mother. His brother. Everyone he loved died because he was weak. So you decided never to be weak again. Yes. And never to be loved again either. Silence stretched between them, heavy and true. Angelina's voice softened. I have 6 months, Vincent. Maybe less. I didn't come here to waste them watching you hide. I came because when I saw you at that altar, I saw a man about to bury himself alive in a marriage made of contracts and lies. She struggled to her feet, crossed to him. You saved yourself by walking away today. Don't regret it now. Vincent turned to face her, this dying woman with fierce eyes and brutal honesty. What do you want from these 6 months? He asked. Her smile was small but real. To remind you how to live. The first 3 days passed in uneasy peace. Lorenzo came and went, bringing supplies and updates Vincent didn't want to hear. Chen's people were searching, asking questions in the right neighborhoods. The organization was fractured, some lieutenants questioning Vincent's judgment, others waiting to see if Lord Macho would return or if he'd truly walked away. Vincent spent those days watching Angelina exist in the small space, noticing things he'd trained himself not to see. The way she moved carefully, rationing her energy like currency. How she stood at the window each morning, face turned toward sunlight as if storing it for darker days. The quiet dignity with which she endured pain she never spoke about. On the 4th morning, he found her in the kitchen, attempting to cook. What are you doing? He moved quickly, taking the pot from her trembling hands. You should be resting. I've been resting for 3 days. I'm tired of being weak. She gestured at the ingredients scattered across the counter: rice, beans, vegetables Lorenzo had brought. I wanted to make something. For us. You can barely stand. Then sit with me while I try. Her eyes challenged him. Or is Lord Macho too proud to let someone cook for him? Vincent pulled out a chair, positioned it near the stove. Angelina lowered herself into it gratefully, and together they worked, her instructing, him following orders for perhaps the first time in 15 years. Chop the onions. Not too fine. Sauté them until they're golden, not brown. Add the garlic last. My grandmother taught me this, Angelina said, watching him work with an expression that might have been amusement. Said a meal made with patience tastes better than anything made with haste. Your grandmother was wise. She was stubborn. Raised me after my parents died. Taught me that survival isn't the same as living. Angelina paused. I forgot that for a while. After she passed, after the diagnosis, I was just surviving. Getting through days. Until I saw your face on the news about the wedding. Vincent added the rice, stirred it into the fragrant oil. Why did that change things? Because I remembered you saying, thank you, in that cellar. Like the words hurt to speak. Like you'd forgotten how to be grateful. She watched him with those penetrating eyes. And I thought, if I'm dying anyway, maybe I could remind at least one person how to live differently. You barely knew me. I knew enough. I knew you were running from something. I knew you were scared. I knew you were kind enough to say thank you even when you were bleeding. Her voice softened. That boy deserved better than becoming Lord Macho. The rice began to steam. Vincent added the beans, the vegetables, remembering the bread she'd given him 15 years ago, how it had tasted like salvation, like proof that goodness still existed in a world that had tried to kill him. I don't know how to be that boy anymore, he admitted quietly. Then learn again. We have time. 6 months isn't. It's enough. Angelina reached out, her hand covering his. Vincent, I'm not asking you to abandon everything. I'm asking you to remember there's more to life than power and fear. There's this. She gestured at the pot, the simple act of cooking together. There's bread broken between friends. There's sunrise. There's choice. The food was ready. Vincent filled 2 bowls, handed her one. They ate in silence, and for the first time in 15 years, Vincent Cordero tasted something besides ambition. He tasted peace. What would you risk everything for, power, or the chance to truly live? Drop your thoughts below. The peace shattered on the 7th night. Vincent woke to Lorenzo's hand on his shoulder, the pressure urgent but controlled. He was alert instantly, muscle memory overriding the unfamiliar sensation of having slept deeply. Through the window, he could see headlights cutting through the darkness, 3 vehicles, expensive and predatory. Chen's men, Lorenzo whispered. 8 of them. Armed. Vincent was already moving, pulling on pants, reaching for the gun he'd kept hidden under the mattress. Across the hall, Angelina's door opened. She stood there in an oversized shirt he'd given her, her eyes clear despite the late hour. Get her out the back, Vincent ordered. No. Angelina's voice cut through the darkness. I'm not running. This isn't negotiable. Neither is this. She crossed to him, barefoot and unafraid. I didn't drag you from that altar so you could die protecting me in some safe house. We face this together, or not at all. A car door slammed outside. Voices in Mandarin drifted through the walls. Lorenzo checked his weapon. Boss, we have maybe 90 seconds. Vincent's mind raced through scenarios, calculating odds, angles, outcomes. 3 against 8. No backup. No armor. In the old days, he would have orchestrated this differently, met violence with overwhelming force, made examples that would echo through the streets. But that was Lord Macho's way. And Lord Macho had walked away from an altar 7 days ago. We talk first, Vincent decided. Lorenzo's eyes widened. Sir? I said we talk. Vincent moved to the door, Angelina beside him despite his glare. Stay behind me. Stay beside you, she corrected. He didn't have time to argue. Vincent opened the door before Chen's men could knock it down, stepping onto the porch with his hands visible, gun holstered. The overhead light painted them in harsh yellow, Lorenzo at his right, Angelina at his left, facing 8 men who'd come for blood. Chen Wei himself stood at the center, immaculate in a charcoal suit despite the hour. His smile was a razor wrapped in silk. Vincent. How domestic you've become. Chen. You're trespassing. I'm collecting what you owe me. Chen's eyes slid to Angelina, dismissive and cruel. She's dying anyway. Why die for pride? Angelina stepped forward before Vincent could stop her. My name is Angelina Clarke. And I'm not dying for pride, I'm living for truth. Something you wouldn't recognize if it wore a designer suit and called you father. One of Chen's men moved forward, hand on his weapon. Vincent's gun was out and aimed in half a heartbeat, his voice dropping to the lethal calm that had earned him his reputation. Touch her, and I'll paint this driveway with your insides. The tableau froze, 8 guns against 2, tension stretched to breaking. Chen raised a hand, stopping his men, but his smile never wavered. The great Lord Macho, reduced to defending a dying woman in a safe house. How the mighty fall. He stepped closer, hands in his pockets, projecting casual menace. I came to offer terms. A compromise. I'm listening. 20 million. Cash. Delivered within 48 hours. Consider it an apology for the humiliation, a severance for the broken alliance. Vincent's jaw tightened. And if I refuse? Then everyone you've ever protected becomes fair game. Your people. Your territories. Your investments. Chen's eyes glittered. And her. Especially her. I'll make sure her last months are spent watching everything you love burn. Angelina's hand found Vincent's, squeezed once. A message, don't negotiate with terrorists. But Vincent was already calculating. 20 million would cripple him but not destroy him. It would buy time, space, safety. No, Angelina said quietly. Chen laughed. The dying woman speaks. I said no. Angelina's voice grew stronger, carrying across the darkness like a bell. Vincent, if you pay him, you become his forever. He'll bleed you dry, demand more, use you until there's nothing left but the title you're trying to escape. Chen's smile sharpened. Miss Clarke, you're dying. What do you care about forever? I care about the 6 months I have left. She released Vincent's hand, stepped forward despite Lorenzo's warning growl. I care that Vincent spent 15 years building a prison he called an empire. I care that he finally walked out, and you want to drag him back in chains made of money. How poetic. How useless. Chen gestured dismissively. Vincent, control your woman before. She's not my woman. She's my conscience. Vincent lowered his gun slowly, deliberately. And she's right. The words felt like jumping off a cliff. Chen's expression hardened. You're refusing? I'm choosing differently. Vincent looked at the 8 armed men, at Chen's calculated fury, at the empire he'd built that now stood ready to destroy him. I walked away from that altar because I was marrying for power I didn't need. I'm not paying 20 million for the same reason. Then you've chosen war. No. I've chosen peace. Vincent's voice remained steady, but Angelina could hear the tremor beneath, the fear he was finally admitting. Do what you need to do, Chen. Burn my territories. Take my businesses. Spread word that Lord Macho is finished. He paused. But leave her alone. She has 6 months. Let her have them. Chen studied him with the intensity of a surgeon choosing where to cut. Then he laughed, a sound like breaking glass. You're serious. You'd give up everything for a dying woman you barely know. I'd give up everything to stop being the man who values everything over humanity. For a long moment, only the night sounds filled the silence, crickets, distant traffic, the wind through trees. Chen's men shifted uncomfortably, uncertain how to process a negotiation that had become a confession. Finally, Chen shook his head. "You're a fool, Vincent. But I respect consistency." He turned toward his car, then paused. "I'll give you 1 week. 7 days to liquidate what you can, to warn your people, to prepare for what comes next. After that?" He looked back, and for the first time, there was something almost like pity in his eyes. "After that, Lord Macho becomes a ghost story. And ghosts don't protect anyone." The vehicles pulled away, taillights bleeding red into the darkness. Lorenzo exhaled slowly. "Boss, you just... I know what I did." Vincent turned to find Angelina swaying on her feet, adrenaline giving way to exhaustion. He caught her before she fell, lifted her easily despite her protest. "I ended an empire." "You ended a prison," she whispered against his chest. Inside, Vincent laid her on the sofa, covered her with a blanket. Her breathing was labored, her skin hot with fever, the stress had taken its toll. Lorenzo brought water, medicine, but they all knew it was temporary relief. 6 months, Vincent said quietly, brushing hair from her face. "We have 6 months to do this right." "To do what right?" Her eyes fluttered open. "To live. Really live." He took her hand. "You saved my life twice now, Angelina. Once with bread. Once with truth. Let me spend the next 6 months learning what you already know." "What's that?" "That being alive and being powerful aren't the same thing." Her smile was weak but genuine. "Now you're learning." The week Chen had given them became a blur of dismantling an empire. Vincent made calls, signed documents, transferred assets to lieutenants who'd earned them. He watched 15 years of careful construction dissolve with each signature, each conversation, each severed tie. And felt lighter with every loss. Lorenzo stayed, loyal beyond reason. "The others don't understand," he said on the 5th day, helping Vincent pack files that would never matter again. "They think you've lost your mind." "Maybe I have." Vincent sealed another box. "Or maybe I've finally found it." By the 7th day, it was done. Lord Macho existed only in memory and rumor. Vincent Cordero was simply Vincent, a man with a modest savings, no organization, no reputation. Just 6 months and a dying woman who'd taught him the difference between surviving and living. They left the safe house on the 8th morning. "Where are we going?" Angelina asked from the passenger seat, stronger today, color in her cheeks despite the illness consuming her from within. "You'll see." Vincent drove north, away from the city's steel and glass, toward coastline and open sky. 3 hours later, they arrived at a cottage perched above the ocean, small, weathered, perfect. He bought it years ago under a false name, a backup plan that had become something else entirely. A home. Angelina stood on the porch, watching waves crash against rocks below, and tears streamed down her face. "It's beautiful. It's ours. For as long as we have." They settled into a rhythm those first weeks. Mornings watching sunrise paint the water gold. Afternoons reading on the porch, Angelina's head on Vincent's shoulder. Evenings cooking together. Vincent had become surprisingly skilled, following her grandmother's recipes, learning that patience did make food taste better. Lorenzo visited weekly, bringing supplies and news Vincent no longer needed. Chen had taken over most of the territories. The organization had fractured, reformed under new leadership. Some of Vincent's former allies sent threats. Most simply forgot. "You're really okay with this?" Lorenzo asked one afternoon, watching Vincent chop vegetables like it was the most natural thing in the world. "I'm more than okay." Vincent glanced toward the bedroom where Angelina was resting. "I'm alive, Lorenzo. Actually alive. Not just breathing, not just surviving, living." "She's changing you." She's reminding me who I was before I forgot. He set down the knife. Before my mother died, before the streets taught me that power was survival, I was just a kid who liked drawing. Did you know that? Lorenzo shook his head. I'd forgotten too. Until Angelina asked me what I loved before I loved control. Vincent pulled out a sketchbook, new, barely used. I've been drawing again. Her. The ocean. The life we're building. For 6 months. For however long we get. Vincent's voice didn't waver. That's the point, isn't it? We don't know how much time we have. Any of us. We just decide how to spend it. That night, Vincent and Angelina sat on the porch, wrapped in blankets, watching stars emerge. Her hand rested in his, her breathing steady despite the cancer's relentless progress. Do you regret it? She asked quietly. Everything you gave up? Vincent thought about the altar, the empire, the man he'd been 7 weeks ago. Then he looked at the woman beside him, fierce, honest, dying, and more alive than anyone he'd ever known. I regret nothing, he said. Except not finding you sooner. Angelina smiled, squeezed his hand. We have now. That's enough. And in the darkness, with waves crashing below and stars burning above, Vincent Cordero discovered she was right. Now was enough. 5 months had passed like water through fingers, precious, impossible to hold, gone too quickly. Angelina's body had betrayed her slowly, then all at once. The walks on the beach grew shorter, then stopped. The cooking together became Vincent cooking while she directed from a chair. The mornings watching sunrise became mornings where she slept through dawn, gathering strength for another day. But her spirit remained unbroken. Tell me again, she whispered one evening, her head in Vincent's lap on the porch, the ocean a dark mirror beneath fading light. Tell me about the boy who liked to draw. Vincent stroked her hair, now wrapped in a soft scarf covering what the illness had taken. He drew everything. Buildings. People. Dreams he couldn't name. His voice was gentle, no longer afraid of softness. He thought art could save the world. And then? And then the world taught him different. Taught him that power was the only protection, that fear was the only currency that mattered. He paused. Until a woman shared her last bread with him and reminded him that kindness was real. Angelina's laugh was barely a breath. Look at us. The gangster and the dying woman. Not exactly a fairy tale. No. Vincent lifted her hand, pressed it to his lips. It's better. It's real. The next morning, Angelina couldn't get out of bed. Vincent called the hospice nurse they'd been working with, a kind woman named Grace who understood that some deaths happened at home, surrounded by love rather than machines. She came quickly, checked vitals with practiced gentleness, then pulled Vincent aside. Days, she said quietly. Maybe a week. I'm sorry. Vincent nodded, throat too tight for words. He spent those final days at her bedside, reading to her, playing music she loved, telling her stories about the life they'd built in 5 short months. Lorenzo came to say goodbye, tears streaming down the face of a man who'd never cried. Even Father O'Brien appeared, the priest from the wedding that never was, offering prayers and forgiveness neither of them needed. On the 6th day, Angelina opened her eyes with sudden clarity. Vincent. He was there instantly, taking her hand. I'm here. Thank you. Her voice was stronger than it had been in weeks, as if she'd saved these final words. Thank you for choosing me. For choosing life. For proving that change is possible, even for men who think they're beyond saving. You saved me, Angelina. Not the other way around. We saved each other. She smiled, and it was the same fierce, beautiful smile from the church aisle. Promise me something. Anything. Keep living. Really living. Not for me, for you. For the boy who loved to draw. For the man who learned that kindness isn't weakness. Her grip tightened. Promise me you won't go back to being Lord Macho. I promise. The words were a vow, witnessed by the ocean and sky. I'll keep drawing. Keep building something real. Keep remembering what you taught me. Good. Her eyes began to close. That's good. Angelina. I'm not afraid, Vincent. I got my 6 months. Got to watch you remember how to live. That's more than most people get in a lifetime. Her breathing slowed. Thank you for letting me pull you away from that altar. Thank you for being brave enough to try. She squeezed his hand one final time. Then, with the gentleness of a wave returning to the ocean, Angelina Clarke let go. Vincent held her as dawn broke over the water, painting the world in shades of gold and promise. He didn't weep, not yet. First, he simply sat with her, grateful for every moment, every breath, every truth she'd forced him to face. Outside, the ocean continued its eternal rhythm. Inside, a man who'd been Lord Macho mourned the woman who'd taught him how to be Vincent again. 3 months later, Vincent stood before an easel in the cottage that had become his home. His hands, once used for violence and control, now held brushes and charcoal. The canvas before him showed a woman running down a church aisle, barefoot and fearless, her hand extended toward a man who'd forgotten how to be saved. He called it, the moment everything changed. Lorenzo visited that afternoon, finding Vincent on the porch with paint-stained fingers and peace in his eyes. You're really doing it, Lorenzo said, studying the artwork. Living differently. I made a promise. Vincent cleaned his brushes with the same careful attention he'd once given to planning operations. She gave me 6 months, but the gift lasts longer than that. Every day I choose to live instead of survive, she's still here. Chen's been asking about you. Vincent's hand stilled. And? He wants to meet. Says he has a proposal, something about art galleries and money laundering. Lorenzo shrugged. I told him you weren't interested. You told him right. Vincent set down the brushes, looked at his friend. That life is over, Lorenzo. I'm not going back. I know. That's why I'm leaving the organization too. Vincent's eyes widened. What? You showed me something these past months. Watching you with Angelina, seeing you choose love over power, Lorenzo's voice roughened. I want that. Not the dying part, but the living part. The real part. What will you do? Figure it out. Just like you are. Lorenzo extended his hand. Thank you, boss. For teaching me it's never too late to change. They shook hands, 2 men who'd built empires on fear, now building lives on something stronger. After Lorenzo left, Vincent returned to his painting. In the corner of the canvas, he added a final detail, words in Angelina's handwriting, copied from a note she'd left him. Power makes you feared. Love makes you remembered. Choose wisely. As sunset painted the ocean in fire, Vincent Cordero, no longer Lord Macho, just a man learning to live, made his choice again. He chose love. He chose life. He chose to honor the woman who dragged him away from an altar and toward redemption. And in choosing, he discovered the greatest power of all, the courage to be fully, completely, beautifully human. The end. Angelina gave up her last months to save Vincent from a life of emptiness. What would you sacrifice to help someone truly live? Share your thoughts below, your story might inspire someone today.